Hey everybody, excuse me. I wanted to make a video showing how to use an airbrush. This is kind of a skill that I taught myself and just a device that I taught myself how to use. But for action figure customization, they're very useful in a couple different ways. But I got it taken apart right now. I'm going to show you what each part does and then kind of put it back together and try to explain how to use it. So this is kind of the gun just broken down. The first part is this. It's a very thin steel rod with a point on it. Probably won't focus on that, but yeah, there you go. Very pointy rod. And this will just go in there a little bit, maybe. And what that's for is basically letting the paint go into the air and like disperse. So there's the first part. You can see it'll just go all the way through, which is why we need the second part right here. Very tiny little nozzle there. And this just threads in to the front here. I'll make sure that's pulled all the way back. And there's a lot of different brands that make these airbrushes. I'm not really sure what this one is, but I got it on Amazon for like 25, 30 bucks about a year ago. Anyway, you want to make sure, check the reviews and everything before you buy one, because there's probably some not so good ones out there. Anyway, that part will basically stop this rod from going all the way out, and this kind of controls how much air is released. So next is this part. This goes on the end here. You don't want it too tight. I mean, you want it tight, but not, you don't want to wrench on it, because that'll mess up the threads there. And this kind of controls the whole mechanism. So when you're painting, if you just press down here like that, it'll release just air. There'll be no paint. But if you press it and slide it back, you kind of see there, the whole rod will move back with it. And that releases the paint and lets it, spray out. And then this here will control the amount of paint that actually goes out of your paint gun. You want to make sure everything's pretty tight. And this will be adjusted depending on the thickness of the paint and the size of your rod that's in there. So next is this piece. This is kind of just like a guard for it. It just screws on there. And there's a rubber O-ring. Can't really see it. But those O-rings are very important, because if you didn't have those, paint would just leak out of this thing and you wouldn't get a good spray with it. And there's this piece, which is kind of like, it has a function, because if you take it off, the gun doesn't work very well. And it kind of catches paint. It kind of like directs the paint, I guess, back towards the whatever you're aiming at. And then the last piece is the paint reservoir, I guess. It just screws in here. It's supposed to have an O-ring. It doesn't really matter on this unless you like flip it upside down or something. But I lost mine, so anyway, that just screws in there. And then you'll take this off and pour in your paint. So if you're using a primer, or here, let me explain. I use Vallejo paints. Right here's Vallejo black primer. And basically you want to shake this up really well if you're priming something. And then I just pour it straight in here. I don't use any thinner. I'll just pour it right into there and then spray it on. But if you're using like a model color paint, it comes in one of these little things, and it doesn't say, if it says airbrush paint, you probably don't need to thin it. I mean, it might be a good idea too, but like if I were to pour this into the reservoir there, it's just straight, it would be very chunky and it probably would clog up the gun. So that's why you need, that's in my room. Vallejo makes a paint thinner for airbrushes, and that's what you use with this stuff. And it says on the bottle, let me go grab it. It says on the bottle how much to use. So airbrush colors, dilute by adding a maximum of 25% thinner. So that's like I said, if your paint bottle says airbrush paint, you'll do 25% thinner. So like 4 drops of paint gets 1 drop of thinner. And this thing has a nice tip on it to where you can just do each drop individually. But then if you use these, like the model color, or there's another kind, I forget what it's called, you'll add 50% thinner. So, 4 drops of this, 2 drops of thinner. So now I'm going to prime something and just try to explain. This is just one of those things where, you don't really understand how it works until you do it. And like how to fine tune it and everything. And I'll try to like go through troubleshooting of like, if something happens, what to do. There's not really much that can go wrong with this, with an airbrush. The main thing is the paint getting clogged. And I'll kind of explain that. If you just let it dry, I mean, you never want to let paint dry in there because it'll just ruin your day. But that's kind of the main thing that I run into, is if I'm painting something and then I switch to like a brush, like a regular brush for like fine details or whatever, and I leave the paint there, it'll kind of dry up and clog up the rod that's in there. And then you have to like take everything apart again and clean it. It's kind of a pain. But anyway, I'm going to grab just a random 3D print head that I have and try to explain how to use it. So I got my 3D print here, if it'll focus. Here we go, sorta. It's just a spawn head I got on Colts, I believe, Colts 3D. And normally I'd get all those little burrs off, but I'm just showing you how to do it, so I'm not gonna do that. But I just take a paintbrush and take some sticky tack or blue tack, and just, squish it in there and get it on the brush, and that kind of just gives you something to hold on to, because when you're using an airbrush, you don't really want to touch the stuff that you're painting. Otherwise you get paint on your fingers, mess up the paint on here. It's just kind of a pain to deal with. So give me 1 second.